So, so again, these are things that we know, but what is important is that so many things can happen, but who are the people driving the thought process? J.D. Vance, Trump Jr., and all these other guys, a completely new set of minds, different from those who came in 2016 when they were not ready for it. So disruptors, but also people. Elon Musk, right? So you ask yourself, Elon Musk, South African, Canadian mother, and all sorts of things. How much of it is rooted in the anti-immigration, apartheid mentality, and what does that mean for the world? After all was said and done, there's one black member of the cabinet. Right. So it's time to sit down and have a deep thought of what it is. So global trend 1.1 is significant uncertainty, and you see the difference between moves and negotiation tactics. So a man whose job was running a casino and a golf course and has had so many, the apprentice and all of that, has a completely different mindset, right? And again, the oldest man to run for the White House, that's different. So we have to deal with that. So this generative AI is what we're talking about, and its impact, and without guardrails. What does it mean? Have we set in motion some things that could come back to haunt? You know, robots, robotics, drone technology. How can we, you're thinking about the positive, but don't forget that there are people who are doing nothing but to look for how to use that. So what are the global risks that we see before we go back to the Nigerian economy? Aggressive US trade policy prompts a global trade war. Yes. What we do, you remember the 5G thing and Huawei and all of that. In the end, the US had no choice but to accept. And I remember when, way back when we had different television systems, we had the PAL STICAM, we had the NTSC, right? And then we had some, and then when we had buy televisions, we had to buy American spec and all of that, because the US refused to comply. But eventually, at the end of the day, they had to fall in line. The same thing with Sony Betamax and VHS. And so a point comes when the momentum of change becomes overwhelming, even to the dominant player. And you remember the chief executive of Nokia when he said, they asked him that there was something called iPhone, and he chuckled and said, what is iPhone? He said, I can't even get it. If you go to a hotel and you don't have a Nokia charger, people do not even stay in those hotels. So, but 2-3 years later, even the Queen was using an iPod, right? US-China military conflict in Asia leads to economic and supply chain. Again, don't forget, there's the Crimea War, there's the China-Taiwan, and there are other variables. And each time there's a conflict like this, if it gets entrenched, it leads to supply shortages and creates. But if it goes the other way, like today, we are seeing that Lebanon, Hezbollah, and Israel have signed a truce, 60-day ceasefire. What does that mean to the price of oil? What does that mean to the price of commodities, which we have invested significantly? I was looking at lithium only 2 weeks ago. The price of lithium went from 9 to about almost 111,000. Where is it now? It's back to about $8,000. At the same time, in Nasarawa State, we're commissioning a lithium factory based on the fact that EVs and all of these things. Wrong. Right? But people have made significant investments on it. So every time you talk about global conflict, remember the economic impact that after war or conflict comes peace. After peace comes a boom. And the boom could be in another form. So economic weakness in China deepens despite moderate monetary policy. China is growing at 5%, and people are saying that that's poor. The Chinese real estate industry is going into a downturn. And don't forget, it was the subprime mortgage crisis of 2008 that brought the world to its knees. Now the second largest economy is facing this. They had a problem with COVID. They have this problem now. And now the Road and Belt Initiative is happening. Extreme weather events lead to food shortage and mass integration, or mass migration, I mean. Now, extreme weather conditions. I saw the floods in the UK 2 days ago. There was some strange rainfall here. And the humidity yesterday was higher than I could ever contend with. So things are happening, and the world is moving in different directions. Cyber attacks damage critical infrastructure in major economies. You can't avoid this. So we saw what happened and with the hacking world. Rapid application of AI disrupts employment in the global services industry. Yes, we are seeing that already. So jobs are being created, but jobs are being destroyed as well, but productivity is increasing. U.S. monetary easing halts prematurely, causing global economic volatility. This is a big problem. Mr. Jerome Powell was asked 2 weeks ago that if Mr. Trump asked you to resign, will you resign? He said, no, of course not. Anyway, we had programmed that we would have a drop in interest rates. Now, I'm not sure that is going to happen. So if that happens, and we now begin to borrow, because the solution to Nigeria's problem includes new money, borrowed money, invested money, and again, but money does not solve a management problem. We'll come back to that in a minute. Oil spills in the Arctic create environmental incidents, stoking global tensions. Very low. So, what do all of this mean for the Nigerian economy? One, we have difficulties in accessing green technology because of the slowdown and reversal. Slowing down is transition to a more sustainable energy mix. We've seen some cement companies trying to exit Nigeria, and I understand Chinese people are coming to buy into that investment. Tariff increase and trade barriers could impact. Yes, one. Two, African Growth and Opportunity Act is another issue which we have to negotiate one after the other. Policies that would disrupt the global financial system. Yes, we claim to be allergic to the IMF and the multilateral, not because of the money, not because of the terms, but because of the conditions tied to proper governance. So there's a governance problem. So our differences with the IMF and the World Bank is because of governance, not because of money. Because if we're allergic to their money, we would not have taken their money when they gave us, right? Monetary policies can lead to fluctuations in the naira. Again, the value of the naira is a peculiar economic, more than quadratic unknown, right? So if we start to talk about the value of the naira, which is a key matter, which I think the central bank governor is going to be talking about today, so let's park that for now because we'll get there. Because reduced demand for oil and other commodities from China could lower export revenues. I doubt that will happen. But it does mean, if you look at the rate of growth of the demand for fossil fuel and oil, it has been slowing over time. Two things. One, people are more efficient. Two, there's a shift towards cleaner energy. Can somebody move that? Okay. So impact of global trends on Nigerian investors. It's not capital flight. I think money goes to where it gets the best and optimal return. So if your markets are not efficient, and if the management of that economy is not efficient, then money moves towards where it will get a stable and efficient return. Remember that short run people look for direction, long run they look for value. And value depends on where your political, fiscal, social, and the mix. Now, would you encourage local substitution, potentially spurring local industry growth? Two things. One is that if the Ricardo theory of comparative advantages begin to fail because everybody's to your tent, so Israel, then local industry, infant industry argument, which is a age-old, stale discussion, becomes current. But you cannot protect inefficiency to becoming efficiency, to becoming competitive. So the thought of it that we must produce this is meaningless. Higher debt repayment burden. The investment of today inflow is also equal to the investment, the outflow of the dividend of tomorrow. Therefore, whatever investments you are attracting, both domestically and internationally, must give you a return on capital that is higher than that which goes out, right? Higher borrowing costs for those seeking international funding, yes. Remember that money is fungible and therefore you can borrow anywhere. And it must be efficient borrowing. Nigerian businesses may be forced to explore alternative markets. Yeah. And let me take a minute to talk about one of the side effects or the major effects of a weaker naira is that your exports, non-oil exports, become more competitive. And we are beginning to see that, first of all, it manifests itself in terms of inflation, because things are expensive, because they are imported. Also, it makes our exports cheaper. Therefore, you will see a lot of people export smuggling first and all other things. So that becomes a set of opportunities there. Volatility in oil prices may deter investment in energy projects. Yes, I met with the OPTS, which is the private sector oil companies, and what we've seen is a lot of FIDs have been made, but the time between FIDs and when it's implemented, and between the time of implementation and impact for people to see it, is much longer now. So global market reaction so far, the dollar, in fact, Tesla shares have risen by about 40% in the last 3 weeks, not because of value, but because of speculation. Bitcoin has gone from, Bitcoin used to be $12,000, it crossed $100,000. And then yesterday there was this thing about somebody's girlfriend mistakenly pressed the wrong button and £596 million went. When with Bitcoin you can't reverse the transaction, it's gone. So £596 million disappeared, right? So, so the US dollar has strengthened. S&P index record high. So everybody's expectation. So the US stock market and markets are becoming grossly overvalued. And after an overvaluation, a correction becomes inevitable. Oil prices have dropped to 70, 71, but hanging around 72. So now with the peace talks between Hezbollah and all of that, we think that oil prices begin to drop much lower, and that has an impact. The yield on 10-year Treasury rose to about 4.5%. It had been dropping. So tariff-intensive world, China, Mexico, Canada. The only person who is smiling in all of this right now seems to be Putin, right? But you never know.